Hi, and welcome to Ask the Manager. We are here with, of course, our town manager, Kevin Mizikar, and Kathy McSweeney, who is president of Rotary, and also a realtor with Collins and DeMac.
Yes.
So
Yep.
glad
Thank you
to have
for
you
having
here.
me. Yep.
So I'm going to let you start because
Okay.
I'll cut in, I'm sure.
Okay. All right. Well, I have a few questions.
Good.
One of the first things I wanted to ask, I mean, obviously the weather has been crazy. So how was your first snowstorm in Shrewsbury?
It was really good. We obviously have a well-tenured staff and a lot of good quality people out there that put in a lot of hours. So I really have to thank them for all the work that they've done. We have had some challenging weather conditions with the cold weather. So those folks out in the field recently have been more than what you may expect. We've had a few major water breaks that have taken, in some instances over 24 hours to fix. So those guys have been out in the field for quite some time trying to repair those. But our highway operations, I think, have performed very well, especially in the larger snowstorm recently. Between the first and second snowstorm, we were actually able to ramp up some of our contracted staff, which allows us to get through our plow routes just a little bit more efficient. But it's always a challenge with that much snow. It takes us a long time to be able to get to the sidewalks and really get everything pushed back. And we try to be as courteous as we can and push back as soon as possible. But inevitably, those last streets, some folks get out there and clean and we make a mess. And we apologize about that. But it's for the good and the safety on the public roadways. And anytime we can help, we certainly do. And recently, actually this year, after this second storm, we utilized the new major piece of equipment that's used that we got from, I believe, Northborough a few years ago. It's a large snow thrower, truck-mounted snow thrower.
I saw that on Facebook.
Yeah, so we use that to actually push back on some roadways that were in the latter phases of that initiative, which means we weren't closing in people's driveways. We were clearing the snow either into a truck or further back off the roadway. So we're trying to be innovative and keep things, everyone happy and running smoothly, but it's awful tough in those hard weather conditions at points.
So at this point in the season, how is the snow budget impacted?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's pretty challenging. Those storms, whenever we're running contracted and town employees for, upwards of 36 hours, at those rates, we're, moving through hundreds of thousands of dollars right off the bat. So it's still strong this year. We have a sufficient amount to get through one or two more major events, but it's hard to be able to budget. You never know. Is it going to be a 2015 year? Is it going to be a 2013 year where we get no snow? So always a challenge.
So when you do the budget for the snow and ice, do you try to anticipate? Do you under budget it, or do you try to guess?
Well,
it really is a guess.
Well, so I'm working in the budget that the former manager developed, so I'm actually learning, and it's interesting for me here because in every other town that I worked in, we had a separate department, so to speak, for snow and ice. It was all pulled to the side, so we could, was out of the highway budget proper. We do our best to have sufficient funding in there. For those line items, it's the only one, as you know, in the state that you can deficit spend without other approval. So, but we're pretty close, unless we have a really uncharacteristic amount of precipitation, from what I've seen looking back, we're pretty close on the budget. And we do have to make adjustments. It's, probably a little leaner than you would if you really had to budget and didn't have the ability to make it up at the end of the year, but we're pretty close.
Oh, that's good.
And budget's a good segue because I know you're going into your first budget session.
Yes.
So what are your timelines and
Yeah.
when do you expect to have at least a draft out?
Yeah, so we're well into the budget process at this point. Department budgets were due the middle of December, and actually had a budget workshop with the Board of Selectmen at their meeting on Tuesday. We went through 14 of the different departments and just kind of talked about what the departments submitted. We will have a draft budget or initial budget out in early February. Okay. We'll have one more workshop with the Board of Selectmen on January 23rd. So I'm really diving down deep into all the calculations and figures and forms that are used in putting the overall budget together. I can tell everyone, I'm starting to learn that there's no penny in the budget that wasn't calculated. There's no guessing. There's a figure and 12 spreadsheets behind every dollar. So I'm getting through that process, and there are a lot of moving parts and pieces and different sources of funding that have restrictions and can only be used on certain things. So we're making a lot of progress. All department budgets are submitted. Meeting with the superintendent of school and the assistant superintendent for finance in a few weeks to kind of have our probably third or fourth meeting on the budget at that point in time. And we're also pretty far along with the capital budget. All capital requests are coming in, and we'll be able to kind of maintain our assets through that initiative. I'm actually pleasantly surprised to see the submissions that came in, and don't have a lot of other, at least, draws on free cash at this point this year, so we should be able to have a relatively robust capital improvement plan, which is always good to keep things stable and, in some instances, moving forward with the public infrastructure.
So do you anticipate our budget book to be big, small? What's your style?
My goal is to make it the same as last year, for us all to have a meeting of the minds and be able to work off of a comfortable sheet of paper. And then maybe in future years, I'll be able to walk you into some different type of documents and reports and things like that. There are things that I would change, but now, this year's not the right year to change them. So it'll be largely, the same weight as previous years, and contain all the same forms and figures. And I really think that is important for us to be able to talk from, a common group. So I'm learning it. You guys are more used to it, but I'm looking at it 40 or 50 hours a week. So I'll be ready to go when it comes time for those hearings.
When you talked about it changing, I watched the finance committee's eyes, and their eyes were popping out of their heads like, you're going to change it? So it'll be interesting to see, but we all adjust to change. Yep. The other interesting factor was Dan, from Mr. Carney to Dan Morgado, we had, Mr. Carney would give us a booklet, and it was so hard to open and hold it on the page and he'd have the notebook, and it was so easy. And I used to think, someday I'm going to put mine in a notebook. And then when Dan came along, he put it in a notebook, and it was so much better. And I'll sit there with my tabs, and I readjust from year to year. I just move them over because it's easier to follow. But it'll be interesting to see how you change that over time.
Yeah.
But I think it's good to ease on in. Not that one's better than the other, but I think everybody just learns to work together in a similar way. So anyways, it used to be funny if you saw us with these. It was like a term paper booklet, so you couldn't even hold it open on a page. Like, you'd have to sit there with your arm across it. So that was probably part of the trick.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you couldn't look too closely at it.
And a lot less information.
Yeah.
Dan was good at giving us information.
There's a lot of information that's related to that, and that's actually really helpful. Whenever I know maybe it's a little nerdy, but whenever I can compare two numbers and it like matches, and I did my calculations, and I can go back to the former calculations, and it all puts together, that's when you start to really build the confidence and gain confidence, and realize you know what you're doing at some points.
Hey, pretty good.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, we'll have finance committee meetings for the budget hearings the first 2 Saturdays in March. And then the third Saturday, right in a row, bam, we have the school committee one, I noticed with the schedule. So we have no life in March.
Correct.
So that'll be up.
Why not?
What the heck?
Yeah.
You get used to it.
Yeah.
So, and being in March, maybe we won't be fighting snow or looking out the window at snow while we're working. And hopefully I didn't just jinx us on that. But.
Well, and hopefully one of the other things is that having it in March and being a little bit later, it'll be a little closer to what it is that we're going to have, and not so many changes after that point. But you never know. That a lot of that's really driven about from what we get from the state.
Right, and that happens at the end of April.
Well, they really finalize everything at the House by the end of April,
right.
And you start to see how much difference is there in the House's budget versus the governor's budget? And if there's a lot of difference, then you really get nervous. But if it's pretty close, then you get a little bit more confident that what you take to town meeting should hold up. And I'm sure it never happens in May that whole state budget's finalized and we're 100% sure. But
Right.
we're pretty sure by the time we get to mid to end of May.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
You mentioned schools, meeting with Dr. Sawyer, and that brings up Beal. What I know there's a Beal Early Childhood Reuse Committee being
Right.
formed, but what are your thoughts on Beal, and what do you see that committee doing, and what are the plans?
Yeah, so the reuse committee is going to be interesting. Having Beal really close, nestled into the town center area, there's a lot of interest to kind of get that moving economically, and I think the Beal project could help the town center get moving economically from a couple standpoints. One, kind of a community building and community engagement. It'll give us the opportunity to kind of rally around something and have business owners, property owners, and interested parties come together. And then, although we did the major public investment in the library right in the center, I think it presents us probably with the first opportunity in quite some time to have major private investment right in the center of town if a reuse is a private facing development. But I see a lot of opportunities, whether it becomes a private housing option or becomes something as quote unquote simple as a parking lot or an open public space or something like that. I think that committee will really drive us in the direction to enhance the town center and maybe take care of some of the challenges and the hurdles as it relates to parking and things like that in the center. So you don't get that opportunity all the time with how that's zoned and how those businesses are and residences are so tightly put together, but this could give us that opportunity to kind of spur and rejuvenate and create some vibrancy again down there.
And isn't there a grant also that can help us?
Yeah.
Will whatever that grant is, will that be able to work in tandem with the Beal reuse?
Yeah,
committee?
it should actually line up pretty well because so there's the parking management study that we'll be doing, and then the other marketing real estate grant that we've applied for, that the assistant town manager has applied for. So those application processes are closed, so we should be hearing the results of both of those in early spring, which should line up well as the committee really starts to move from its norming and forming into gaining some traction and making decisions about what we're going to do. We'd really like to have that committee have a good solid basis for what their recommendation would be by the fall, whenever we're kind of saying, okay, this is what the new school is going to be, and here's what we think can happen at the former school site. We think that's important for residents to be able to know, what's going to happen with the existing site, and it should help them make their decision, towards the school as well. At least that's our intention, to give everyone all that information at one time.
Okay.
And you have to consider, if it's private, how does that impact traffic through the center? If it's something for the town, how does that impact traffic? I mean, because that will be a big part of concern, I think, for the residents and also the residents in the area around there. But it'll be a hot spot. So it'll be interesting
Be a
to
lot of
see.
interest.
Big change for the town. So.
I haven't heard any issues in a while, knock wood, about water, but I know it's something that your infrastructure changes with water and sewer, or what are you addressing, and how's that coming along?
Yeah, so a couple of things on those front with, just recently, just this morning, I met with the water and sewer superintendent to talk about capital for fiscal year 2019 and what we may include in that. And as it looks right now, really early in the process before even releasing anything, it looks like we'll do some significant water main improvements, next fiscal year, continue along those lines of replacing, relatively significant amount of water main to kind of keep up with the 75-year estimated lifespan of all those mains. We are in the process and making a lot of progress on the new water treatment plant.
Okay.
So that project is actually a little bit ahead of schedule at this point. We anticipated it being completed in December of this year, and it looks like it'll be on track to be fully operational at this point in October. So that's good news, and that's really going to help with water quality, reduce the manganese, and keep the colors out of the water, and kind of hopefully keep everyone a little happier from that standpoint. So we have had some water breaks recently, which have challenged the crews, and so we're always out there trying to remedy those problems. We worked our way through a water rate study and analysis, and as we are nearing the implementation of that, we did kind of put the brakes on that and take a step back. We're going to look into more of the business operations and business process end of our billing system, and kind of clean up the data, look at some of the recommendations that were made by our engineering consultant this past July in 2017, because they kind of did a broad-based audit of our unaccounted for water. So that's water that we pump out of the ground, but somehow don't get back to the same number on the billing side of things. So we may pump, just say for argument's sake, 1 million gallons a day, but only bill out 800,000 gallons. So we need to figure out where that other water is going, despite doing some comprehensive leak testing. So leak testing has wrapped up for the year. We tested all the mains in town through basically sound and electric current to try to determine if there's any leaks within the lines, and we didn't find a lot, which is good and bad news. So bad only in the instance that we didn't find the major leak that we wanted to find and be able to easily deal with our unaccounted for water. But good, because it means we thought we were running a tight system. All prior audits have shown that we are, and it continues to be the case. So we're really optimistic that as we look at the business processes and the water meters and the data that we use in our billing system, that something may pop, so to speak, and identify something numerically or business process that may lead us to some of that unaccounted for water, because we do really have to focus on that and get that in check. So the reason, because of that uncertainty and wanting to take another look at that data, we have put the water rates on hold. We still plan to implement a new water rate by July 1st, which will keep us on track to meet our goal of having enhanced revenues to make debt service payments once we have to, wrapping up that water treatment plant for fiscal year 2020.
And 26% increase is shocking.
But maybe, just maybe, I shouldn't even say this, but maybe, if we're able to look at the data a different way, that increase wouldn't have to be as big if we were able to find some way that water was making out to users, but some reason we weren't just capturing it all through the meters. So.
And talk a little bit about the meters, because people have different size meters, or different meters calculating different ways. Or?
Yeah, so most residences have a 5/8 inch meter, so that's the size of the pipe that the water flows through to the meter. So most residences have a meter of 5/8 or 1 inch, but then as we get into larger industrial and commercial type consumers of water, we have anywhere from up to a 6-inch meter, and so there are certain assumptions, like you don't necessarily need to have a digit of 1 gallon at the 1 gallon level on a 6-inch meter, because you're flowing a gallon every millisecond through a large commercial application. So there may only be 3 digits that you see on the top of the meter if you're actually looking at it, but that may be 10,000s, 100,000s, and millions. So that's some of the data analysis that we need to do. We need to get back out in the field. We need to touch those meters and compare how we have it set up in our on our servers and networks. And so when we're billing, we need to make sure that if it's a 3-digit meter, what level of specificity are each one of those digits at, and is that how we have it recorded whenever we apply the data from that meter?
And who does that?
We will rely upon consultants. There actually are specialized consulting firms. I've been trying to do a little research that really do billing and meter audits, and we've used a couple of consultants that we're very familiar with that work on our water and sewer systems in the past. sometimes it's good to have a different set of eyes on it, though. So.
Well, I'm sure, along with the residents in town, we all say, take your time.
Yeah, work on that. Yeah.
Get it right.
Yeah. Where is the water treatment facility?
It is in the western corner over, if you go past where you make the right to go up to the high school off of Main Street, just continue underneath, well, you're already past 290, but it's right there on the right before you get to Mezzo.
Oh, okay.
It's
Oh, I
kinda
have
hidden.
now.
It's,
Yeah, now I
Gary's
have seen. Yeah,
Boathouse.
now I have seen it. Okay.
The end of the lake.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. I have been by that.
It's kind of tucked back in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And the other thing on the waterfront is some of that work will actually be done. You know, we have incredibly talented analysts within our IT departments and our water department that look at these things every day. So if we give them the opportunity to dive into the data and not be dealing with the day-to-day, I'm sure, you know, they'll bring us a long way as well. But the other thing that I wanted to say on water outside of the billing is we've applied for a grant to have solar panels installed at where the old treatment plant will have been when we tear it down. So there'll be a small solar array there that will power some of the electricity needs of the new water treatment plant to reduce costs as well.
And so Michael's involved with that?
Actually, no, Selco's not too involved
Not at
in
all?
this one, no. We're trying to get a grant through state DEP, and you know, Selco will be a big partner and help us interconnect, but it's not directly related to them as a utility provider.
Michael has done a lot of research around different solar farms and so forth, and I'm sure he'll be putting his 2 cents worth in.
Oh, we've consulted.
Welcomed, I'm
Yeah,
sure. But
yeah, absolutely.
And you said there were water breaks?
Yes.
Where were they?
2 main water breaks we've had over recent weeks were on Grafton Street and kind of, you know, at the southern edge of the community, and one right in front of the fire headquarters building.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. That one was a very challenging operation.
Traffic issue, too.
Well, it was actually on Church Street,
Oh,
so
oh.
kind of no traffic issue, but a lot of underground traffic, so to speak. The break actually was an old pipe that was directly underneath a fiber optic conduit that runs the telecommunications to the fire station. So we had to be very careful
Oh, boy.
in dealing with that.
So
And
there were no complications?
yeah, the complications was
It
the
was
cold.
complicated.
Yeah, it was complicated, and we actually had to bring in a specialized truck
Really?
that used heated water and to heat up the area
Wow.
for us to be able to then deal with everything, because everything's frozen obviously, because we had no snow cover, so the frost line was really low. So
Wow.
it was quite challenging. I think 21 hours on the job for our teams out there.
So when you think of town employees doing that type of work, and we see them in the summertime when it's nice out, and you think, oh, they're so lucky to be outside, you have to think about
Right.
the other end
There's
when
a
it was so
couple-
freezing cold, and that's usually when they have to be out there, because there's always some
Yep.
water break somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Water mains tend to go when it's really cold, not when it's nice and warm.
I know. Phew.
Yep.
I wonder if that's why they all go south when they retire.
Yeah, probably.
Can't blame them.
I know.
So I think we're all excited about Whole Foods opening and the Lakeway Commons. What other developments do you see coming to town, or if it's that area and also maybe the Route 20 area?
Yeah, so Route 20 is probably the biggest. We have a couple somewhat smaller developments that are well underway. So we have the Shields MRI right off of 290 on Main Street. That building is really coming along. I don't know. I don't have a projected date that they'll be occupying that space, but to me it looks like it should be sometime before the fall. Then we have a major, somewhat of a similar facility that's going to be going in at the, the name of the plaza better than I, the CM Adams property, where the
Fairlawn.
Fairlawn Plaza. So they'll be constructing a new facility there, much like the one
Okay.
that's over at 290. So it'll be a med-surg facility. So those are 2 great high-end professional buildings that are.
So that'll be a brand new
underway.
building in Fairlawn?
They're going to tear half of the buildings down, kind of to the left of the Imperial Buffet and
Okay.
things of that.
So the
things
old
like
Big D.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they're going to tear that down.
That'll
and
be
rebuild
exciting.
there.
Yeah,
I-
that'll be
you know,
great.
I think
Yeah.
that's great.
So anytime you have these, individual little developments, they tend to spur other developments right around them. So hopefully that produces. And then along the Route 20 corridor, we are still working. Was reviewing some documents today on the Edgemere Drive-in redevelopment. So that continues to move forward, and we're working with the developer and Market Basket and that whole team. And right now we're trying to secure some land along Lake Street for an easement to put in a sewer pump station, which is critical to the redevelopment of that entire corridor, along with our interconnectivity with the city of Worcester. So our intention is to begin to move some of our sewage in that area of town to the west toward the city of Worcester and the upper Blackstone. Most of our sewage currently goes to the Westboro treatment plant to the east, but we're at capacity. We can't really add much more there. Route 20, we could develop and send that way, but we think it's more prudent to have it head towards the city of Worcester and to the upper Blackstone, which gives us opportunities perhaps in the rest of the community for more development. So I think you'll see, a lot of activity on that site later in 2018, and we'll continue to have opportunities to have grand openings and new businesses opening in 2019 and 2020 perhaps, in that area. But the Lakeway Commons development is, still progressing and maturing. Whole Foods will have their grand opening the end of January. So we've gotten a couple invitations for that. So they're going to do, like many other businesses in Lakeway Commons, including Unibank, they're doing a community. They're providing donations to community organizations, so I'm really excited for them to do that and support Shrewsbury as they open here in town. So the other businesses are opening here and there. We're issuing COs and getting the shops
CO
up.
is
Certificate of occupancy. Where businesses are finally able to operate and they've come through the entire building inspection permit process. So that continues to happen on a weekly basis down there.
And at Whole Foods, there's going to be a restaurant inside, and it's going to be dedicated or named after Spag,
That's right.
or the Bugatti family. So I find that to be pretty exciting that they've stayed dedicated to the area and dedicated to the legacy of that property. I think that's pretty nice.
That is very nice.
And I happened to be at another Whole Foods recently, and I look forward to that going in there.
Yeah,
I think
it's
it's
gonna
going to be exciting for all of us. Great cheese.
Now, did I hear they have a liquor license in that restaurant?
Yeah.
They do. There's
Okay.
actually going to be a brew pub inside, so
Okay.
they'll be brewing beer within there, and so it's going to be quite an experience inside those four walls, more than a grocery store.
That's great.
And the restaurants there have always seemed to be busy. There's always a lot of cars
yeah.
in the park, even in bad weather. If you're driving by in bad weather, you're like, look at all the people that are out to eat tonight.
Yep.
It's just amazing. And going back to Edgemere, there's, what is it, like about 120,000 square feet?
120,000 square feet of commercial/retail space and
250 units?
apartment units.
And now, I'm a little confused. Are those going to be like condo owned, single ownership, or are they going to be rental
I
properties?
believe they're for rent. Yeah, managed.
So that's
on
different
site.
than, a little different than up here at Lakeway?
Well, Lakeway, most of the Quinn 35 development is rental apartments. So the condos that are on Muzzy and Olympia
Yeah.
are owner
Private,
occupied. Yeah.
Okay. And they still have a lot of work to do with the planning board, sewer
Oh yeah.
commission,
they have
DOT, traffic, and there was one other thing. And the Conservation Commission, because of the lake being
Yeah.
abutting.
So we're still in the really early stages of kind of the paper pushing and putting agreements in place on who's going to do what and who's going to be responsible. But we've really taken a team approach, and we've reached out and received a lot of support from Representative Hannah Kane at the state and other officials. Lieutenant Governor, I've had a conversation with her about it. So we thank all of them for their support, because everyone is helping us make this project successful. And we're moving along.
And then jumping back to Shields MRI, they have to put in, which I don't know if they have or they haven't, because I haven't looked closely to see if the building's closed off. But the equipment that goes in there, it's so complex. Just getting it into the building, the machinery, and then all the cement and everything that goes around it. It's a real, it's more than just putting up a medical office building when they do that. And it's really fascinating. It's complex, but fascinating.
The heating and what I assume to be the heating and air conditioning and everything that's on the roof of that building is quite substantial in and of itself. So.
And I think the neighbors that abut that property, in the back of that property, they were very concerned when a hotel was going to go in there, and they felt there was going to be a lot of transient. And I think they'll be much happier with this. It should be quieter, and it's more of a daytime business, first of all. And
With the lighting was a big problem
Yeah.
too, to have those big spotlights in a hotel parking lot.
right. So I'm happy for them that it all worked out in the end.
Yep.
So for that, it's good, and all of that is revenue for the
It
town.
is.
Yep.
And there's talk, I'm jumping from project to project, but the Phelan property, when they put that medical office building in, those people, I mean, it's good for all the local businesses, because those people are going to want to go to lunch. They'll do their, quick errands in the area. So it'll bring more business in other ways than just the property itself. And then when you jump over to Edgemere, there'll be restaurants there too.
Yeah, that's our understanding. So the Whole Foods is, the Market Basket would be about 80,000 square feet, and then
And that's a great store too.
the balance would be other, retail and restaurant type shops.
Are they thinking of doing it like their Lexington project? They have a Market Basket up there with a bunch of different restaurants, and I think there's a hotel. That's what I picture when
Really?
it's right off of 495.
Huh.
I'm not Lexington, Littleton.
Oh, I've never gone to that one. I've just gone to the Market Basket in Hudson.
And that has restaurants and stores too, doesn't it? up
There's a
there?
lot of stores
Yeah,
up there. It's sort of similar to Northbrook Crossing and Millbury, in that it's up high, and they somehow find all the high property
Right.
for buildable, and it's amazing what they put up there. But this is level; it's just abutting the lake. So,
Right.
anyways,
That'd be nice.
enough of the obvious.
Yep. Nice to have some choices when it comes
Yes.
to being able to eat out and buy food.
I
So
know.
that's good. Yep.
And it's good to eat before you buy your food; then you spend less money.
True. That's true. I know there's a lot of talk in the news talking about different stores and shops that'll come in. Medical marijuana is something that's all over the news.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
and I know different municipalities are talking about different bylaws. And what do you anticipate for Shrewsbury?
Yeah, so there's two different aspects. There's the medical marijuana aspects, and then there's the recreational marijuana aspects. And so we've been talking about both a lot lately. The medical marijuana facility that was approved on Hartford Turnpike has pulled a building permit, so they're starting to make progress on that site.
And whereabouts on?
I'm not exactly sure what number it is.
I don't know the number, but it's headed from the drive-in property
Okay.
going up the hill.
Okay, like where the hardwood store?
Somewhere
store?
in that area.
Okay. All right.
So they're making progress on that, and so we're easing our way. The Board of Selectmen is easing their way into discussions, and staff is beginning to develop a number of different options for bylaws for the regulation of recreational marijuana. So recreational marijuana, the town has the ability to control sort of the time, manner, and place of how a recreational marijuana facility would operate within the community. And that would be done through both general bylaws and zoning bylaws. So we'd have to go to town meeting. There's currently a moratorium in place, so no recreational marijuana establishment would be able to open through the fall, actually the end of calendar year 2018. That was put in place at the annual town meeting last spring. But the state process is kind of maturing in that the Cannabis Control Commission has released its initial draft regulations, and they're really centered on how they are going to receive and review and take a look at applications and applicants and who's eligible, and then what the process would be for those facilities to open. Shrewsbury has a unique opportunity in that the majority of voters at the ballot question in 2016 voted no. They did not support the passage of recreational marijuana. And the legislature has given those communities the opportunity to have the Board of Selectmen offer a warrant article, if they choose as a body to do so, to ban recreational marijuana establishments from the community. So
And that's because of the vote, because we voted
Yes.
no overall. Huh, I
yeah,
didn't
so
know
a
that.
community that voted to support it in aggregate does not have that opportunity, and they have to go the whole way to a ballot question. But here, if a warrant article is offered through a special or annual town meeting, then a simple town meeting vote would dictate whether or not those establishments were banned or not. So there's going to be a lot of conversation and a lot of debate. The Board of Selectmen is going to hold a public hearing on January 23rd at their meeting to discuss this. Members of the Board of Health will be there, members of staff will be there. We are preparing a number of type of different options. We're preparing warrant articles so the board can react to see what that would look like if we banned it, what it would look like if we're going to regulate it, and if we regulate it, we can limit the number of those type of entities that are able to operate, how far their setbacks may have to be from places of worship or where children congregate or other different things. So we do have some controls, and then what process do they have to go through locally in order to get a building permit and a certificate of occupancy to be able to operate. So that's really under debate right now, and there's going to be ample time for public input. You know, the planning board would hold public hearings, the Board of Selectmen would hold public hearings, and then ultimately go to town meeting, whether we regulate it or ban it, or seek both. And then there's always the other question the town meeting would have to answer would be, do we tax it locally? So we have the ability to apply a final 3% sales tax on that, which would take the total taxation on those recreational marijuana sales to 20%. From a total sales tax standpoint, three would be earmarked for the community, just like the meals tax.
That could bring down our water rate.
Could.
I couldn't resist.
So you know, that would be the option. You know, if we are going to regulate it, then obviously I think it would be prudent to tax it and you know, have that additional revenue source. You know, there's not very many times you get the option to have a new revenue source within the community, so we would take advantage of that and make sure we're prudent. You know, there are certainly some challenges that come along with drug use, whether it's alcohol, drug, whatever it is, and if we have the opportunity to dedicate some of those funds to that, that's something that we would do. And one of the provisions that, you know, should these businesses be able to operate within the community, if that is the choice that's made, they're required to enter into what's called a host community agreement with the Board of Selectmen. And that really, above and beyond the taxation, attempts to quantify the impact that, you know, these type of activities may have on the community, from police, fire, school, addiction, different things like that, and allow us to be able to have funds and resources in place to help people that it directly impacts and mitigate its impact on the general resources of the community. So the goal is for us to at least from the public standpoint, I'm not talking about the addiction standpoint, kind of be on a level playing field before they come into after.
So 20, 30 years from now, will the public look at this like we look at prohibition?
That's an
You know,
interesting
I mean,
question.
if
Yeah.
you think about it, is it that it's the fear of the unknown?
Could be.
I have to be honest, I voted for the medical marijuana. I voted against the recreational marijuana. But now that it's here and people voted for it, I don't want the town to miss out on an opportunity because I don't think it's going to matter if they go to Shrewsbury or Northborough or wherever to buy whatever they're going to buy. And, you know, I keep asking myself, is this just the same? Do people look at this like they looked at alcohol back then? So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah,
Sociologists will have a lot to write about.
Yeah, there are two really, main sides to it. It is, it's going to be surrounding us, so why not have it? And if it's here, why not, tax it and get some revenue for it? And then there's some, the other side of the argument is, well, don't give anyone the opportunity, make it as hard as possible to keep it out. So those are really the arguments.
It's not had now, obviously. So.
Those are the arguments that I hear, but
Right.
Through, where is it going to be? Is it going to be on Maple Avenue where the middle schoolers are walking?
Right.
So we
No,
have
that's a
all
good
those,
question.
those
In
community.
the Beale building.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah, we have all
Exactly.
those challenges that community kind of decide where it's going to go, and does the revenue ever offset the social ills or perceived social ills?
So there'll be a lot of discussion.
A lot of discussion, I anticipate,
Yeah.
and but the good news is the community makes the final call.
Mm-hmm.
So
Municipal Vulnerability Grant,
yes, MVPs.
MVP.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what do you have to say about that?
We've moved to the position where we have selected a consultant to come in and actually conduct it, and it couldn't be more timely. Global warming is a concept, a warming concept, but these temperature swings and the impact on the public infrastructure, and it being below 10 degrees for 7 days in a row. These are some unprecedented things that for whatever reason we are forced to deal with. So the municipal vulnerability program really looks at the impact of climate change on a municipal by municipal basis and allows us to put a plan in place to kind of deal with these things. And I know Boston with the flooding and all those things, they're going to be
Right.
looking at those vulnerabilities, and we certainly have those vulnerabilities.
But there's
here
other
in the public
vulnerabilities too.
infrastructure.
Will they cover more than, do they focus on one or do they,
Oh no, there's many. Yeah,
Okay.
it's
for
many.
example,
It's many, but it's mostly climate based.
so it's not chemicals?
Yeah, it's not really
Oh,
that aspect of
okay.
it. It's my understanding it's a climate based. It comes through the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Mr. Beaton, Secretary Beaton's organization, and it's focused on that and towards the climate action plan of this.
So
Commonwealth.
would that include things like tornadoes?
It would, yeah, it would include all different types of weather events. I wonder,
Blizzards.
not to be an alarmist, but if you look at what happened in Texas with those hurricanes, so a hurricane is a natural event in Texas, and I'm sure the city managers and town managers along the coast in Texas had plans in place and thought of that, but the part that no one was prepared for was for that storm to come in and out and in and out,
Yeah.
and get all the rain that they got. So I think, well, what if a major winter storm stalls and it has that type of activity to bring snow in and out and in and out and just
Blizzard of 78.
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
constantly come. But even in magnitudes beyond that, 48, 50, 60 inches of snow, what do we do? I
Right.
mean, you look at the Great Lakes even this year, they received 36 inches of snow in 24 to 30 hours, which is, pretty tough for Erie County. So
Well, our blizzard of 78 had that
Yeah.
was like 36 inches or
Yeah,
something like
right.
that too, so
yeah, that's
before you were born, but
70 what?
78.
78.
Okay, no comment. I'm
But
just kidding.
no, so that was one where, people all didn't expect it to be
Sure.
as big as it was.
Right.
So a lot of people were caught unprepared.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the end, they just stayed in their house because they had no choice.
We missed 2 weeks of school. I remember it came on a Monday, so we missed that whole week, and the whole next week was February vacation. So it was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So going back to the town center, are there a lot of applicants for that committee?
The Bill Reuse Committee?
Yeah.
I think we have 5 or 6 in the office between the Board of Selectmen and the town manager.
And how many do you want?
There's 2 at-large positions, one selected by the Board of Selectmen and one's selected by the town manager.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
That'll be very interesting. I can think of a couple of good candidates, but I haven't gotten to them to say you need to apply for this. But and Shrewsbury Development Corporation is seeking a new member.
Yeah, there is an opening on there. You have to have certain qualifications and criteria. I don't know if you have that. I'm
No.
not exactly sure what
Me
that
neither.
is. There's information on the Shrewsbury Development Corp website and the town manager's website for information along that. If you're interested,
And how would
it's a
that
great
tie
committee.
into your vision of having someone focused on bringing business to town besides this committee?
Yeah, so I mean, the SDC is critical. You know, their current purview, or their main purview, I guess I should put it that way, Centec North and Allen Farm, again, development on that property up there that the town acquired, you know, over 10 years ago at this point. But the ability for the Shrewsbury Development Corporation to really impact economic development in town goes much beyond that. Their sole scope isn't just limited to that parcel. So if we can get some momentum on this parcel and get some funding and start to use the real powers that they have through the special legislation that established them, you know, that's a great, powerful, and good community impacting organization to be a part of. Yeah.
Did you have any other questions before I interrupt again?
No, you're doing fine.
Okay, so we have January 17th, the special town meeting,
Yep.
and there's 8 articles now.
There are 8 articles.
So what would you like to tell the public about those articles? Like, what's the real purpose of this town meeting?
The real purpose of the meeting is Article 4, which is a request for town meeting to authorize special legislation to acquire the Glavin properties off of Lake Street. So that is really the reason that we're having it on January 17th. That's kind of the time driver behind this. And that would transfer all that land that's associated with the Glavin Center. So the 20 acres that are the Glavin proper, and then 18 acres related to where Shrewsbury Youth Soccer has their land, 13 acres, I'm sorry, and then the balance of the property that's currently used for agricultural purposes. So the intention of acquiring all that is to put the Glavin proper parcels, the 20 acres, under general municipal purposes, leave the area that's currently being used for agriculture only for those purposes, and leave the area where Shrewsbury Youth Soccer is currently using those, actually transferring it from the state to them, and with a kind of default back to the town if they no longer need it, but keeping that for open space recreation.
So the agricultural property, is it in the article or in the context of the intent, would that be for as long as Parquet is in business, or would it just stay that
It would be
way?
in perpetuity, yes. So that piece is coming to the town, but would be restricted for those purposes, not general municipal purposes. So it would take actually, if it's going to be restricted land under the open space and agricultural recreation provisions, we'd actually have to go the whole way back to special legislation to change that in the future.
And that property, the Glavin property, over the years always looked like great property for the town to acquire. And years back you thought, oh, the state would never release that property.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the chances would be if town meeting votes to move forward with this proposal? What would you imagine the state would do?
I think we're partnering with the state on this initiative. I think we're both moving in the same direction. I don't think the state sees a current need or a future need for that property, and I think that, with the advice and guidance that we're getting from Representative Kane and from the Lieutenant Governor, we're moving in lockstep partnership with the state. So a little more than a formality, but a little closer to a formality than something coming from out of left field. There's a lot of people that have been working on this, including Selectman Jim Kane, for a long time to make this happen.
So it's a very exciting time, I think,
Yep.
because like I said, people in town have always talked about if that could ever be town property.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just so happy to see that the soccer fields were allowed to be there, and everything has moved along. So where have all the Glavin residents gone? Have you ever had any information about that? I know that they were placed somewhere else. I just don't know where. I don't know what happened.
I mean, a lot of that evolution has gone out into kind of the private nonprofit, smaller home models, things like that. The different model that we operate under, kind of for mental health and things like that. In the current environment.
So Articles 1 and 2 are about money, money, money. What would you tell us about that?
So Article 2, starting there, is a routine money article for us. So every year we anticipate a certain amount of money that the water department is going to raise, and when they raise more than that, since we're often conservative, those dollars came in because of water revenue and ratepayers. So we move that plus any money they didn't spend out of their operating budget out of free cash, where it goes, because that's where the state puts it at the end of the year when we close our books. We transfer it back and kind of limit its use for only water purposes. So we're very disciplined in that. So and that's the right thing to do, kind of run it like an enterprise fund, even though it's not. So that's just transferring $1,241,000 back to water from free cash. Article 1 is a simple transfer from the personnel lines to the expense lines within the building inspector's department. So we had the assistant building inspector departed earlier this year. We haven't been able to refill that position, but we've been using contracted services. So we're just moving that out of the personnel line, which we can't spend on contracted services, to the expense line so we can make those payments.
So it's sort of a formality.
It's a formality, yeah.
And then 5 and 6 are about Prospect and North Street property.
Yeah, that's really not going on, nothing doing here. All that work was actually completed in 2005, which was the reconfiguration of Prospect and North Street intersection, and that work was completed by the contractor as a part of the building development that was going on there. The town didn't act quickly enough, and didn't act really until we noticed it this fall that we hadn't actually filed the deed with the Registry of Deeds and acquired the property from the property owner, and we never accepted and changed the public way that goes through there to make it a public way. So it's really formality of all formalities to put all the legal documentation in place to make that.
The work's already been done there.
The work's
then it
all
won't
done.
change. Okay,
No.
all right, because I was driving by, I had to go through there to get here, and I'm like, what are they going to do?
Yeah, no new work.
Okay.
You won't see any trucks.
Okay, all right.
And then Article 7 is the library bond.
Yeah, so Sherwood Middle School project wrapped up. Once we closed everything out and got all of our reimbursements back from the state, we had $465,000 roughly left over from that. Since those are borrowed funds, we borrowed those funds for 20 years to build that school. We can only use it on a like project, which means a project that you can borrow for 20 years. So often we ladder these funds through capital projects like this all the time. So the next project in line is the library after Sherwood. So instead of borrowing an additional $463,000 for the library, we're able to borrow that amount less, knowing that we had these funds from Sherwood. So we're just moving it over to that project.
So the town benefits by doing this. It's not the library benefits. They're not getting more money.
Right.
It's just we can bring down that bill.
Yeah, we're paying that bill through Sherwood, so to speak, but it offsets the cost of the library. All those funds are intermingled somewhere along the way, so it does reduce the cost of taxpayers.
And then Article 8 is easement for drainage purposes, Stony Hill.
Yeah, so Stony Hill Road, there's a housing development that has been proposed, and they are moving forward with that project. So that developer, as part of their special and comprehensive permits with the ZBA, were required to seek a drainage easement to channel water from that development across the road and into the wetlands. So we actually have icing and water concerns in that area, so this will rectify the current problems and make sure that the development doesn't exacerbate the problem.
And we have a town historian,
We do.
and that's an appointed position
Appointed by the Board
of Selectmen. And that person is Michael Perna.
That's correct.
And this person's going to do what?
He's-
Because Michael's been doing a lot of this
he's-
anyhow.
Now he just has a title.
He deserves the title
The formality.
because
Yeah.
he sends us a monthly report every month, obviously, and it's amazing the work that he gets. And a lot of his work is generated from questions. So people have a lot of questions about ancestry and cemetery type things, and homes and structures. I go to Mike and ask him different things about structures and what was here, and do you have pictures of this? So he really is our front person with all that knowledge, and has a wealth, an individual private collection that he relies upon, that I know he's interested in giving to the town as well. So yeah, he's a huge resource and a wealth of knowledge, and he's a historian for the state, for Veterans Affairs. So it's really great. And like I said, he provides a monthly report to the board, and it's a nice long bulleted list.
And as residents, we can look to him as he publishes information and pictures. It brings us back to our youth, remember when, which you won't know, but White City was an amusement park, and he has all sorts of pictures, for example, of that. He has pictures of Route 9, how it looked before, how it's changed over time. So I think that was a great, an easy choice.
Yeah, it's critical. I mean, I had questions about the original town hall, and not only was he able to tell me, confirm where it was, but, just explain to me that, it wasn't a municipal office building. That's not what town halls were built for. So it was more of a gathering community space. There wasn't all these, municipal workers and town manager and everything. That's not why they built the building. It was, a gathering space and a hall in the hall sense, auditorium sense.
And you would go into that town hall, and it would be dark. And when you walk down these wooden floors, you'd hear everybody's footsteps, and there'd be echoes. And it was like walking into church, and everybody could hear you walk in. It was the same thing in that town hall. And it was right on the road too. I mean,
Yeah,
it was amazing how it was right on the corner. But going back to water, Lake Street work, and then Francis Ave and Greenwood Street. We only have a minute.
Sure. Lake Street was the water main replacement this summer. That's mostly wrapped up. Francis Ave, we did the design. We will finish the water main. We're going to seek funding through the capital plan as it sits right now to replace the water main in Francis Ave this year, because the following year we're going to repave it from end to end. So yeah, there'll be a lot of activity in that area again this summer.
So it'll be Lake Street, that'll be repaved in the springtime, is that what you mean? Or it's not already repaved, is it?
Right, it's not repaved, but the water main work is completed within it. And then, yes, we'll follow up with paving, and then Francis Avenue is kind of a year behind that cycle.
Okay.
From end to end.
All right, well, we're out of time, and I'd like to thank Kathy for being patient and coming back to meet the new town manager. And I'd like to say thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.